You shouldn't confuse people going to a meeting to express their support for a former leader and see what's going on with all wanting to change direction again. That would be a mistake.
William, how big a hurdle is Liz Truss? I mean, and are you embarrassed that this is a figure that was kicked out after barely a moment, and now the whole party seems to be rolling over to have their tummy tickled by this figure in many ways who's a disgrace, And yet, so the Conservative Party appear to want to raise her up again as a saint.
Well, there's degrees of being polite and so on. And she is a former prime minister, but it was not a successful 49 days in office. And I wouldn't have been there cheering yesterday. So, but former prime ministers should certainly be accorded respect and listened to. But, we know that an agenda of sudden big tax cuts without being able to say how to pay for them can be not only very risky economically, but it can be a political disaster as well. And that's what happened last year in Liz's time in office. So the Conservatives have to learn from that. They have learned from that.
Well, they haven't learned that much because they're fating her again. This is exactly the point. Your party, William, is not you and Rishi being lovely and huggable. It's a bunch of people saying Liz Truss is the Messiah.
Well, you shouldn't confuse people going to a meeting to express their support for a former leader and see what's going on with all wanting to change direction again. That would be a mistake to interpret it in that way. Clearly, the Conservative Party is very. You also saw Jeremy Hunt's speech yesterday that went down very well with the conference, and he is practicing the disciplined approach to the economy that Rishi Sunak always wanted, and pointed out would be the only one that works, and that is bearing fruit. Now inflation is coming down, and it turns out our economy is bigger than it was before COVID, and it does stand reasonable comparison. Good comparison with many of the European economies. So this approach is working, but you have to have the patience to stick to it and not charge off in a different direction.
Yeah, the polls aren't inflating very much, it must be said, at the moment. Kez, you're a student of politics in the broader sense. Is there an issue about how if you appeal to your base, the country doesn't feel listened to? There's a big distinction that strikes me. This is true of all parties. I'm sure it'll be true of Labour next week. That maybe less so with a centrist party, actually. But the base of Nigel Farage and Priti Patel and Liz Truss and Suella Braverman, they get very excited. They're very excited when they talk about migrants. They're very excited when they talk about tax cutting. They're very excited when they talk about environmental nonsense. The bet is that that's enough of the country to get them elected. And I wonder whether the distinction between base and general electorate is quite an important one here.
I don't think it's anywhere near enough to get elected, but I do think it's not necessarily the right thing to do, but it's what parties are going to do during their conference week, is rally their base. That's about party discipline, it's about morale, it's about getting shoulders back and heads up a bit, because there's no doubt that the next 12 months are going to be incredibly difficult for the Conservative Party. They have a chance, they can rebuild from here, but Rishi Sunak doesn't have a blank sheet of paper in front of him. As we've just discussed, he's inheriting a legacy and a reputation of the Prime Ministers that came before him. It's an awful lot to turn around within 12 months. In order to get to that centre ground, though, he's going to have to do a lot more than demonise trans people, denigrate migrants, and cut the benefits of people who are out of work. There's going to have to be some centre ground policies there around aspiration and investing in education and solving the social care problem facing the country and bringing a little bit of hope back, dare I say. I don't know if we'll get much of that at the party conference, because I think his goal this week will be to do as much unity stuff as he can. But in the months that follow conference, he's going to have to walk towards that middle ground of British politics.